Welcome to the Planted Courtyard. My name's Ian Cooke, and today we're going to look at greenhouses. Now, here we are in mid-November. It's really cold out here now. It's probably high 30s, maybe low 40s. And it's at this time of the year that maybe you wish you had a greenhouse. Now, a lot of things to choose from. You could go for a brand new greenhouse, which has got new aluminum, maybe some polycarbonate. There's a whole range of different products that you can buy brand new. I will say this, that from all reports they're a little bit flimsy. It's not something I would consider. And on the Planted Courtyard, I built my own greenhouse using laminated lumber and a product called Solar Wrap, and that fitted my needs perfectly. So you do have the opportunity to buy new, but I want to share with you the idea of repurposing something old. This beautiful greenhouse behind me was built 30 or 40 years ago. It's made by a company called Lord & Burnham, and it represents a wonderful opportunity to find an old greenhouse that needs some love, dismantle it, build your own footing, and then rebuild it on your property. And if I had my choice, this is exactly what I would do. This greenhouse measures 14 feet wide by 25 feet long. It's in very good condition. All the parts are there, all the panes of glass are there. It hasn't had a winter where things have started to fall to bits and the wind has got in there and twisted things. It's intact and in good order. So what I want to do today is show you how a greenhouse works, why a greenhouse like this might be perfect for you in your situation, and the steps and things to consider in deciding if you need a greenhouse. So let's go and have a look. Now, a greenhouse like this is the perfect size, being that it's 25 feet deep and 14 feet long. That's a good size area to heat up. If you go for a small greenhouse, the temperature can spike, it will suddenly increase, and sometimes they're a little bit difficult to ventilate. This greenhouse has got a lot of features that you should copy in your application. So let's first of all understand how a greenhouse works. So what we have in here is a trapped volume of air, and the sunlight comes in through the glass, the natural daylight comes in through the glass, and with it comes radiant energy, and that radiant energy is focused on that same volume of air, and it will gradually increase. So out here it's high 30s and cold. In there it's at least 65 degrees, and this is late morning in mid-November with no artificial heat. This is just the natural heat of the sun. So that temperature range is free energy, and that is essentially what we want to do with our greenhouse. The greenhouse gives us the opportunity to provide consistent temperature, available water, we can change humidity, we can control pests and diseases, and essentially lengthen our growing season. So with that in mind, let me show you some more things about this wonderful greenhouse. This greenhouse was built by Lord & Burnham back in the 90s. They started building greenhouses and conservatories in the 1800s. There's many greenhouses that could be over 100 years old. This is a much more modern unit. Nowadays, we tend to want to entertain with our friends, and a table and a chair is a great way to do just that in a nice, warm, inviting environment. Now, greenhouses have got a lot of systems that work, and the most important, or one of the most important, is the ventilation system. Here you see a gearbox that opens, and it will open multiple times a day, open and close, to modulate the temperature. If it gets too hot, it opens, and the vents work from end to end. Really important to point out that it can open just a small amount, or it can open really wide. This is the management system of keeping the environment just perfect. Too hot, plants fail. Too cold, and they die. It's really important that you inspect as many mechanical joints as you can. Here you see no rust, no corrosion, no deterioration. You want to inspect as many of these fittings as you can. If they fail, it can be difficult to get parts. You might have to make some. So take your time and really look at all the systems. Having a watering supply is absolutely vital. Better if you can run it into the greenhouse rather than having it on an exterior wall. A fitting like this, you could add a splitter and have two systems, and you could even have a timer that would switch on a system for automatic watering. Make sure that you've got the time and space for some very durable and robust waist height benching. This will save you back. It'll give your plants the ideal location to grow in a very healthy manner. Underneath the bench, you can put a blue water barrel. Here you see one in the planted courtyard. This one's been painted black and it absorbs heat during the daytime and releases it at night. You have a number of these barrels in your greenhouse and it will greatly reduce the amount of artificial heat you'll require to keep your greenhouse frost-free. There's a single question that you have to ask yourself before you start to look at any greenhouse. Plastic, new, old, reconditioned, cobbled together, homemade. And the question is, what is the minimum temperature I'm prepared to maintain in my greenhouse? Now, the planted courtyard greenhouse is kept frost-free, so that's at the 35 to 45 minimum range. I have a little heater that kicks on, and then obviously when it gets hot I have a vent that opens up and lets that excess heat out. Now, you need to decide this. If you want to go frost-free, you can reduce your heating system and reduce your heating bill. If you want to keep it at, say, 55, you can increase a more tropical range of plants that you want to grow, but your heating system and your bill will be much more robust and much higher. Let's say you want to grow orchids that need something really toasty, maybe in the 70 range. Well, you'll need even more of a heating system and even more expense. So once you've got that down, once you've answered that question, you can then go about deciding on how to run your greenhouse. Now, if this was my greenhouse and I was going to put it in my yard, I would consider obviously very carefully taking down this end, because this end is what I want. I'm obviously going to keep this. But rather than building it full length, 25 feet, I might put that end here, come in a couple of bays, and what that does is give me a whole series of spare parts, spare aluminum ribs, spare glass, spare fittings. So if anything in the greenhouse were not to work quite right, I know I've got the parts to fix it up. So let's say this gets rebuilt at 20 feet. The next thing I would then do is probably segment it off. This area here is the potting shed behind me, and what I would do is come out a couple of bays and then put in a temporary fence wall with a door, and I could keep this at 55 and I could keep this at 35, and that would work very well. That would allow me to have an area where I could propagate cuttings at a high temperature, and then they could come out in here to harden off. So there's another. There are plenty of greenhouses out there that people don't want. Of those, about 10% are worth dismantling and rebuilding. I would go and see at least 3 or 4 different units, and I would not fall in love with the first unit that I saw. Working with glass is inherently dangerous. Make sure your unit is robust and tough. And greenhouses are meant for growing plants. And that's it. They're not meant for storing broken wheelbarrows, pots, tools, and bags of potting soil. So with a greenhouse like this, there's lots of opportunity. I don't want to in any way minimize the amount of effort it will take to rebuild a greenhouse. You're handling it twice. You have to dismantle it very carefully, take it back to your house and store it, and then you have to put it on a good, strong foundation, and then rebuild it, and then seal it up and get it to a point where you can work. But I was asked by a colleague of mine if I knew of anybody that would want a greenhouse, and I did. I brought 2 of my good friends here, Darcy and Dave, and they had a look at this only a few days ago, and within a few hours they said this was their greenhouse. So they are now committed to what will be a multi-month project of carefully removing this and then rebuilding it ready for next spring. At least that's the plan. So if any of you out there have a greenhouse that you no longer want and you'd like it removed, drop me a note in the comments box. And if any of you out there would like a greenhouse, and maybe I can help you find one, drop me a note in the comments box. It would be wonderful if we could save these beautiful greenhouses that have got a lot of appeal and a lot of use for future generations. There's no reason why they need to be taken down and dismantled and never used again. They absolutely do have a future life. So on that note, thank you for watching The Planted Courtyard. I've really enjoyed doing this video, Outside it's cold and inside it's toasty warm, and what a wonderful place to do videos in the winter. So thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and there'll be more soon.